I'm Rick Lewis with Phenon Hoop Report, and on today's segment of Coach's Corner, I have Coach Travis Lemanski of Southview High School. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, thank you for being on today. Coach, you're from the state of Michigan, so what brought you down to North Carolina?
Yes, sir. I was born and raised in Michigan. I'm not really much of a winter person, so as soon as I got my degrees, I wanted to venture somewhere warmer. I actually took a spring break where I stayed at like 4 or 5 different cities down south, Charleston and Raleigh. I stayed in Charlotte, and I stayed in Wilmington a few nights, and I really fell in love with Wilmington. So as soon as I got my degrees from college, I took my $600 I had, and I moved into an apartment in Wilmington. And that's kind of what began my tenure down here in North Carolina.
Now, you stated you got into teaching so you could coach. Now, you must have decided early on that you want to become a coach.
Yes, sir. I was probably 19 or 20, still in college, when I realized that, I couldn't play at the college level. I was at Michigan State University, which got to be pretty darn good to play sports there. I had played football and basketball in high school, and I had a couple coaches that were very influential on me and really instilled a lot of passion for the games in me. And I just wanted to if I couldn't play, I wanted to do what they did for me, and that would be to, instill that same kind of passion into younger athletes at the high school level. So I knew probably, like I said, 19, 20 years old, that's kind of the profession I wanted to get into.
Your first coaching job was at North Brunswick High School in Leland, North Carolina, and that's at the coast. So I'm sure since you wanted to move from Michigan to warmer weather, that was just fit your expectations quite nicely there as far as living in warmer climate, living near the coast. Tell people a little bit about North Brunswick, where Leland is located, and one of the top players that played at that particular high school.
Yeah, North Brunswick was my first. Well, I was at Pender High School for half a year. Right after Hurricane Floyd, I filled in for a teacher whose house was unfortunately destroyed after the hurricane due to flooding. So I taught actually at Pender for just the second semester, and it was quite a drive from Wilmington, maybe 45 minutes one way. So I definitely didn't like that and didn't enjoy that. And I reached out to some other schools, and I got a job at North Brunswick. North Brunswick is in Leland, which is right outside of Wilmington. You're literally across the big bridge and you're in Leland. So I was right there on the beach. I was still in my apartment. And I was there for 10 years, and they had a lot of history, basketball history. They had one of NC State's better players at the time come through there, Chucky Brown. I believe he is coaching for West Johnson High School now in the state. We had a reunion for him where he came back, and, we gave him lots of love, the North Brunswick community. And I think he still holds, I think he's tied with 3 other NBA players for having played on the most teams in the NBA. He played for 12 different NBA teams, which is quite an accomplishment.
A journeyman in the NBA.
Yeah, definitely, most definitely. But he was definitely a standout. I can remember he had in our gym, we had a Houston Rockets jersey when he was playing for Houston at the time, and a big poster of him up on our gym. I'm sure it's still up there. So he meant a lot to North Brunswick's program and a lot to NC State's program, and just a great, great, great athlete.
Now, you've spent 4 years as assistant coach before you got promoted to be the head coach. Talk about the transition going from assistant to head coach and responsibilities between the two.
Yeah, I was working under Coach Scott Myers at the time, really knowledgeable. So I learned a lot of stuff from him. While I served as his assistant, I was also our JV head coach as well. So I knew that when he was kind of on his way out looking to maybe make a move himself, that I was definitely going to throw my name in the hat. And it worked out kind of well because the JV kids I was coaching, I kind of moved up with that group, which was nice. So I had become very familiar with the athletes in the school, obviously, and what I had, which made the transition even easier. Probably the most difficult thing was we were a 1A school at the time when I got the job. And after my second year as the head coach, we moved up into a 2A division, which was a lot, more difficult competition. And, but we met the challenge head on. And I was ready. I kind of gave myself a goal 5 years when I initially moved down from Michigan, that within 5 years I wanted to become a head varsity coach in either sport, football or basketball. Because at North Brunswick, for the 10 years I was there, I coached football all 10 years as well. So, basketball opportunity came first. So I grabbed it, and, the rest was history, basically.
Now, Coach, you spent 7 years as a varsity coach at North Brunswick. The team went 105 wins to only 55 losses. And then you had a not a career change, but a job change. You went from being the coach at North Brunswick, you took the head coaching job at St. Paul's, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So what was the mindset going from North Brunswick over to St. Paul's?
Actually, it had a lot to do with family. I had met my fiance at North Brunswick High School. She was a history teacher, fresh out of UNCW. And when we got engaged, she is a native of Robeson County. And we were thinking about starting a family after we got married in 2008. And her being a native of Robeson County, that's where a lot of her family still resides. So I told her I'm good to move as long as I can get a head coaching job over there. So I wouldn't have probably came to Robeson County unless I landed a head coaching job. And it just so happens that St. Paul's was looking for a coach at the time, and that's actually the high school she graduated from in 2001. So I put my name in the hat and came out and interviewed and got that job, and made the move from North Brunswick to St. Paul's, where I was their head coach for 4 years.
Outside of the coaching, what was the biggest change as far as being on the coast going to Robeson County?
A lot of people I talked to said you did it backwards. Most people, move out towards the beach, right? And I said, well, I was at the beach for 10 years. I was ready for a change of scenery as well. Being out at the beach for 10 years, I was looking for new opportunities, and I really felt like I had done almost everything I could do at North Brunswick in the 10 years I was there. So, it was a challenge and something different, and I accepted that and was basically ready to move on.
Well, it seems like to me, Coach, early on you said you just wanted to be a coach, and you bounced around basically from sports of football and basketball. And then when you were at St. Paul's, then you had an opportunity to go at Hoke County, which is a bigger school, and also become the football coach. What was the transition like going from basketball to football?
Yeah, I wasn't the varsity football coach. I served as a JV coach for Hoke County. It was an easy transition because even when I was at St. Paul's as the varsity head basketball coach, I was also their head JV football coach for those 4 years. So I never really got out of coaching football. So things at St. Paul's, I just felt like Hoke County being a 4A school would be a good move for me to make that transition to a bigger school. North Brunswick was 1A, 2A when I left it, and St. Paul's was a 2A school. So Hoke County was my first 4A job, and really opened my eyes, how many students are actually in these bigger 4A schools, because I had yet to experience anything like that. So I once again made the move over to Hoke County and coached football for 4 years over there. And then I also assisted Coach Kwame Patterson with his varsity basketball team and was his assistant coach for 3 years.
Is there much difference coaching football versus basketball?
Well, being a football coach for so long, I always encouraged a lot of my players to get involved in football. I just think it makes them a lot stronger, a lot more physical on the boards. And you got to fight through a lot of, adversity mentally in football, fatigue, the heat, the pounding you might take or might give. It's a lot more grueling of a sport as far as the physicality is concerned. And I always like my basketball players to bring that to the court as well. And I think a lot of times if you have success in football at a school, that will carry over into the basketball world as well. But the biggest difference was just the specialization of athletes. At North Brunswick and St. Paul's, a lot of them played football and basketball, a lot of my athletes. But
Dual sport athletes.
Yeah, because when I got to Hoke County, then I realized it was, more of a division. The football players, a lot of them just ran track and played football and lifted weights. And a lot of the basketball players maybe ran track or cross country, but there wasn't a whole lot that played football and basketball. So that was a big difference to me, a kind of eye opener.
Now, Coach, you went from starting out as an assistant coach, and then you became a head coach. And then in this transition, you went from being a head coach to an assistant coach. How difficult was that?
It was I was a head coach for 11 consecutive years there, 7 at North Brunswick and then 4 at St. Paul's. And then when I helped Coach Patterson out, I was back to being an assistant again. But he made it so easy. He's a heck of a guy. I've got nothing but good things to say about him and his program. I really felt like, anything I could say at any time, he really took to heart, took into consideration. So it wasn't like a dictatorship where he made all the calls. I very much felt that the 3 years I was there, he took a lot of my advice and we kind of worked as together, but it was a little bit different. I was used to calling all the timeouts and doing a lot of the speaking, which I had to step back and let him do that. And, I would throw my 2 cents in whenever I felt it necessary, and we worked great together.
Now, a lot of times when you take a new coaching position, it's always going to be a situation where that particular school is rebuilding. And that's the reason why they may have an opening at that particular school. After your stint at Hoke County, you became the head coach at Southview, where you are currently. Naturally, it was a rebuilding situation. And you said your first season you went 2-22, which had to be tough and very difficult. But this last season, you turned it around and you made big improvements. The team went from 2 wins to 11 wins. You went 11-13, but more importantly, you made the state playoffs. That must have been pretty gratifying.
Absolutely. That first season over there, I got hired very, very late for the job to begin with. So we missed the whole summer. We had no time for any tournaments or camps or I literally had a few open gyms and got to meet the guys. And, I don't know if we selected the greatest, did the greatest job with that first year, because we simply didn't see the guys as much as we wanted to. We didn't see them in any game type situations. How would they react in adverse situations? So we kind of went in that first season pretty blind. The 2-22 season, it was grueling. It was the worst season I had ever been through, but I just kept thinking that this is a rebuilding year, and Rome wasn't built in 1 year. All the good adages just to keep fighting and keep plugging away. And one thing that never stopped was my work ethic and the team's work ethic. It made us work even harder. The day after our season was done, I gave them a few days off, and we were right back into the gym and into the weight room. And to bounce back and have the season we did was tremendous. We improved our conference wins by 8 wins from 10 in our conference, which is a very tough conference. You got to be ready to compete every night or you're going to catch an L in our conference. So to go from 2 to 10 wins was great. We made the state playoffs, which was another accomplishment. And I had a relatively young team as well last season. We only lost 5 seniors, and we could possibly have 9 guys coming back if we choose to keep them. I don't like to tell them that, just because you made it last year, you've got a spot for, they've got to re-earn it every year. And I try to make that clear just to keep guys hungry and keep them working out. And no one really has a spot, but that's what we like to tell them anyways, just to keep them aggressive and keep them working.
Well, that's the one thing coaching, it's tough about coaching at the public school level. You have to coach the players that are there. Unlike in a situation in a private school where kids can transfer in, then you can rebuild a program a little bit quicker. At the public school level, you really have, like you said, you really got to put the work in really, really hard to build that program back up. And you said, you only had 2 conference wins that first season. And last season, you won actually 10, and you went 10-6 in the conference. Now you have a sophomore by the name of Cedavion Wimbley, and he averaged 20 points a game. He's a sophomore. So you have him returning. So what's your goals and expectations for Southview this coming season?
Our goals are very, very high. Our expectations are high in our program. Cedavion Wimbley was a player that transferred in at the midway point from Trinity School there, the private school. So when we got him and his transfer took place, we were basically a different team. He really brought the level of everyone up. And that's kind of what we needed. We were kind of missing that go-to player that you could depend on, and his tenacity offensively and defensively was very, very good. So the sky's the limit for him. He was our team MVP. We voted on it, and even though he was only there for the second half of the season, when he came in, it was a noticeably different team. So he's definitely coming back, will be a core. I had, including him, 4 other sophomores that were on the varsity team this last season. Emmanuel Evans, he's got a really good upside. He's going to be a junior next year. Gerard Brown, who started a lot of games for us, he'll be a junior next year. And then we have 2 twins, Cody and Jesse Gatewood, that are also nice looking sophomores that play varsity. And we also have 4 returning juniors that will be seniors next year, and Tim King and Ladrell King. Both of those were starters for us and saw lots of minutes. And then we got Royford Morris and Tyreek Ross, who saw significant minutes as well. So we're very, very, very excited about our future. And actually, we've got a young man coming over from Southview Middle School. He's 6'5". His name's Ari Fulton, and I haven't gotten to coach him, but I've seen him play a couple times. We took the team over to the middle school to support them, and Ari just looked great. 6'5", he's dunking already, and has a nice outside shot. And in my 20 years of coaching down here, he's probably one of the best 8th graders I have ever seen.
Wow.
So his upside.
Oh, there's a lot of good 8th graders come through Fayetteville.
Yeah, so we're trying to keep the private schools away from them, and keep them in Southview, because that's been a problem too at our school. Is we've had some talent, really good talent, that will, go to the private schools as well, and that's hurt us a little bit as well.
Now, Coach, you're in the same conference as Westover, and they're a pretty good team. They were co-champions last year as far as state in the 3A. They have a pretty good player in DeMarco Dunn. How good is he?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate Coach Stackhouse and his coaching staff and his team for their state championship. I'd also like to congratulate Coach Brian Edwards and his coaching staff and his team over there at Lumberton. It's nice to see local teams bring home some big hardware like that. So congratulations, both you guys. But back to DeMarco. DeMarco Dunn's a handful. He's very, very tough. What makes him tough is he's got a good outside and good inside game. He can shoot threes. He can take you off the dribble. And with his size, 6'4", playing guard out there, he's a handful to match up with. You put someone about his same size on, and he's got him beat foot speed wise, and he'll just blow past them. You put little guys on there, he can shoot over them. So he's definitely, a mismatch problem for us. He had 2 big games against us. I know we ran up a triangle and 2 against him the second time we played, and we thought one of our best defenders that could stay with him on him, and then we locked up Darius Jewell also, their good little 3-point shooter, which they have both those guys coming back next year. They were both juniors this year, so and we did all right on Jewell. It was more effective on him, but DeMarco still, even with the triangle and 2, he was able to have a huge impact on that game, and pretty much scored at will whenever he wanted. So he's the real deal. I'm so happy for him to see all the offers he's getting. Is great for the young man, and I can't wait to compete against him next year, and can't wait to watch him evolve and follow his basketball career.
He just picked up a UNC offer, but Coach Stackhouse brought his Westover team to our high school jamboree back last November, which is a pretty good event where we get a lot of the high school teams together and they get 3 scrimmage games. The great thing about it is we attract a lot of coaches at the D1, D2, D3 level. That particular game, when he was there, VCU was in attendance and they saw him at that event. And I think that was his first offer he got when he was in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. I had heard before, like Twitter feeds and stuff, before he actually played with Westover, that he got an offer from UTEP, Texas El Paso, because he's from Arizona, out west that way. So, I don't think he had quite too many offers until, he really landed at Westover. And now it seems like he can have the pick of the litter. So congratulations to him once again.
Yeah, it's sort of like a domino effect on college offers. He gets a few offers, and it's sort of like the dominoes start falling. And of course, the big one was the UNC offer this past weekend, and well deserved.
Yeah, I know Texas offered, and Shaka Smart, which would be a cool coach to play for, and he's intense with his havoc and stuff with ECU. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be hard to pass up Carolina, though. You're right about that with being right in state here. And, we'll see where he's leaning towards. So,
now, Coach, you coached at different cities in North Carolina. How would you describe basketball in the Hoopstate?
One of the main reasons I chose North Carolina, actually, go back to the beginning, is the great rivalry between UNC and Duke. I went to Michigan State, so I'm obviously a huge Tom Izzo fan, but I've always been a fan of Duke University, and not so much the players, but what Coach K was able to do at that university. I remember, he had a couple rough seasons there, his first couple seasons, and they just still believed in him, and he turned it around and pretty much has a dynasty there, and has had a dynasty there. The most winningest coach, obviously, in D1 history. So that was a big deciding factor on me choosing North Carolina too. Was I wanted to be in a basketball hoop state, and I've really only got Michigan to compare it to, and Michigan has I think both of them, if you would put a list of best basketball states, I think Michigan and North Carolina are probably both in the top 10 across the United States. Tremendous basketball in both states. I grew up with the Flintstones coming out of Michigan State, Mateen Cleaves, and all those Flintstones we had. And then you had Draymond Green from Saginaw, Michigan, and Chris Webber from Detroit Country Day. And I know Shane Battier was at Detroit Country Day and went to Duke. So, and they had a nice little rivalry back then when the Fab Five was coming through, and, them and Duke. So it just seemed fitting that me being from Michigan, if I wanted to move to a warmer state, it'd be North Carolina, another great hoop state. But, high school hoops is, top 10 in the United States.
Now, Coach, you've had the opportunity to coach basketball, football. You've coached at several different schools. What's some of the biggest lessons you've learned since you've been down here in North Carolina?
Sure. I think a big lesson is the officials are always right. The refs are always right. Because when I was a younger coach, I wanted to win so bad that I would argue a lot of calls where I probably should have just kept my mouth shut. So that's just something I think you're young and ambitious and eager, and I sort of had to humble myself and understand that I needed to start playing that game with the officials better. And since I calmed down, I think it might be some with age and experience. I'm not fighting the officials as much as I used to. I remember when I was at North Brunswick just getting going, I just couldn't stand it. It would drive me crazy, and the banter back and forth with the officials, and I'm sure a lot of the officials didn't respect me as a coach, which probably didn't help the program out much either. So that was definitely something I needed to learn and have learned over my years, is I just teach my players the same thing, that the officials are always right. They're going to miss calls. They're not perfect. So that was a big thing. And I think also that having a very supportive administrative staff is key. And I'm blessed to have a great one now at Southview High School. Principal Dr. Robertson has a great administrative staff that really gets behind their sports athletic programs, and that makes a lot of difference when they can be out front and upfront with you, and you feel comfortable, with them. Our new athletic director, Mr. James Blue, does a tremendous job supporting all the athletic programs, and also having other coaches that all get along, and we're not pulling athletes in one direction. We all get along. Scott Ellis, the baseball coach, is very supportive. Rodney Brewington, our football coach, also equally supportive. I could go on and on. All the coaching staff is like a big family there. It makes it enjoyable to go to work and not have to, pull strings or persuade kids to play your sport or this sport. Everyone's kind of on the same page, and I think that's the leadership that Dr. Robertson, instilled in school, and it's great and refreshing to have that. Makes it easier.
Well, Coach, you've taken, Southview. Your first year, you said you was 2-22. Last year, you were 10-13. You got an awfully young team. You got a promising young sophomore. You have a promising eighth grader who's going to be a freshman this season. So we look for big things for Southview this coming season. And we want to say thank you from Phenom Hoop Report for being on Coach's Corner today. We hope to see you at one of our jamborees, and we will want to definitely make sure we get by at Open Gym when things open back up. And we just again want to say thank you.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. And hey, I'm looking for big from us next year too as well. And go Tigers.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.